we're excited today to be talking about rent and rent increases. There's a period of time when we're renting where every landlord wants to make more money. And that's their goal, right? They're wanting to make more money, but there's limits that they have on that because we've signed a lease agreement with the landlord and we're obligated to those terms. So when can a landlord increase rents and how often, and what are the regulations between that?
Yeah, excellent question, Scott. And so I think it's important to understand in the state of Utah, there's a parameter, and it depends on if you are on a month-to-month already, or if you're currently within the parameter of your 12-month lease. Okay. It depends is the answer, right? So if you're already in a month-to-month, let's say you originally signed a 12-month lease.
Well, let's start with the 12-month.
Yeah.
Let's start with the normal lease, 12-month lease, because that's
Okay.
where most people, not very many people enter into a month-to-month agreement. So.
But sometimes you do have people that enter into a 12-month lease, and at the end of that, neither party executes an additional
and it
12
converts
months,
into
and it converts to month-to-month. And so
yeah.
there is some parameters there that you need to understand. But let's go with a 12-month lease. So if you have a 12-month lease in process and it's coming up, let's say 2 months out that your lease is going to be due, the homeowner or the landlord under state statute is required to give you notice of at least 30 calendar days before the increase takes effect, right? And as a general rule, the effect always takes place on the first of the month. So if it's June 1st and they want it to take effect July 1st, they would have had to give notice May 31st. Yeah. And so there's a full 30 calendar days prior to that increase. So it gives you as the tenant the ability to say, I'm good with that rent increase, or it gives you the opportunity to say, I'm not good with it, I'm going to go find other housing and look at that.
So that's towards the end of the lease. Can a landlord increase it during the middle of the lease?
Only if the parties agree to it, because that's the purpose of the lease, is it sets that in motion, or it sets it for this 12-month period of time. That lease is fixed, right? That way you can budget, right? Because imagine if you're trying to set your budgets at home and you don't know if the landlord is going to jump out and increase your rent on you. How do you make that work?
But they can't do that. They can't just come in and randomly increase your rent.
That's correct. That's the purpose of the 12-month lease, is it gives that fixed parameter.
Now I have seen in many lease agreements that there's a clause that says that a landlord can, with notice, they have to do the notice, but they can increase it within a certain percentage.
Yes, and again, but that's within the parameters of the lease. Right? So if your lease doesn't have that function, then they can. But you see it a lot more in commercial leasing, where your lease period might be for a 5 or 10-year lease, and it has incremental rent increases. In residential, it's usually a 12-month block, and it usually doesn't have that increase, but it could be there. So this is one of those reasons why I want to say, go read your lease and understand that.
Read your lease, make sure, because I've seen some where they do have the ability to increase the rent, but it's only within a certain amount of time frame. And sometimes people are in a long-term lease, like 12-month or a 2-year lease, right? And so there's options in there that if a landlord wants to, they can. It's not always the best interest of the landlord to do that. And not every landlord is out there wanting to increase it, to maximize it always. Especially if you're like the perfect tenant. They don't want to lose you. They might have incentives to keep it low.
There's value to the tenant. Well, let's talk about that. So let's say you're negotiating your 12-month lease and you don't want to go with that. You say, you know what, let's keep it month to month for right now. If the landlord agrees to that, then it changes that parameter. It's no longer a 30-day requirement. It goes down to 15 days. All right, so that's a disadvantage to the tenant, in my opinion, advantage to the landlord. But they can literally change your rent every 15 days if they wanted to.
It's not common.
It's not common.
But
the instrument then is against you rather than, as a protection for you. So I always advise tenants to always get a 12-month lease and keep it active to protect you. The reality is rents can increase, and here it is, 2023, we're seeing record inflation that we haven't seen for a long time. That 12-month lease can protect you against that inflationary force of rent increase. And so if you aren't going to be a homeowner and protect yourself long-term, at least get a 12 to 24-month lease that does protect you from that. Because month to month, you're really at the mercy of market forces.
Yeah, you think you're ideal because you as a tenant can just give a 30-day notice to move out, but so can the landlord. So you got to think about that. Is it really the best thing for you?
Here's a concept that you look at there. Does the state statute say rent can only increase by a certain percentage?
Once you're out of a lease, the landlord could increase it 50% if they wanted, but it's not common.
The way it's stated is the landlord can charge whatever rent he wants to, and you can pay whatever rent you want to. It really comes to be a meeting of the mind. If you both say, yeah, we'll agree to that, then that's what the rent is. There's not a restriction of can a landlord increase the rent only by 5%, 10%.
Yeah. Once you're out of that lease, it's renegotiating. So let me ask you this. Now let's transition into rent late fees.
Yeah.
Is there a maximum late fee that a landlord can put in a lease agreement? So you're sitting down with your tenant and you're filling out the lease agreement, and then he has in there a fee that you think is extremely high or not. Is there something that regulates that late fee?
Again, it comes down to the contract, and the state specifically stays out of that because it's a point of negotiation, right?
So the answer is no.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Typically, the landlord sets it of what their policy and procedure is, what the market will bear, right? I've seen some late fees being $100 a day out there in some leases, and that's pretty exorbitant in my opinion. And so I don't think that's fair, but again, it comes down to the state would say whatever the parties agreed to, that's what it is.
And I've also seen a per diem fee, so whether you call it per diem or not, I don't know, but it's a per day, so you have an initial $50 late fee, and then every day it's another $5 or $10 fee every day. And I've heard some areas where that's a little extreme too. So
so it really comes down to it's between the parties to agree to. And the nature of renting, though, is usually the lease does favor the landlord and the homeowner. So going in and understanding what you're agreeing to and obligated to is very important out there.
Okay, so let me ask you another question, and this is for everybody watching. Is there a service out there that will help people with late fees or late payments?
There's one coming.
Well, tell us about it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to know what this company is.
So Tenant Solutions is developing a bridge mechanism that allows you as a tenant, as a member of the group, that you can take a bridge. Let's say you get paid on the 10th, but rent's due between the 1st and the 5th, right? But your payment's coming on the 10th. Well, by the time on a typical lease that we see, that could be between $100 and $150 in late fees that you accrue out there. But if you're a member of Tenant Solutions and you've applied and have been granted this bridge program, what that does is allows you to pay your rent on the 5th. Tenant Solutions will fund that money up front, and then when you get paid on the 10th, you pay them back. And if you're within those parameters, it doesn't cost you anything, but it saves you $100, $150 in there.
Late fee.
So you think about, well, that's huge. If that goes on for a year, that's $1,000+. It's a huge tactical tool. And what that does, it also puts you in better standing with your landlord, which gives you better negotiating power, because you say, I've never been late. Why don't you keep my rents low, because I'm a quality tenant. I've taken the steps to be quality. You need me as much as I need you, right? So there's some advantages coming on there.
It's a short-term loan that members can take advantage of, and we want it to be a huge service for people for a short period of time. It's definitely not a long-term loan.
Well, you think some people will go out to these title loan places, and title loans, to borrow money for 2 weeks can cost 20% or 30% plus additional fees, and all of a sudden it's cheaper to take the late fees than it is to get a title loan, and then you're not putting your car at jeopardy. This is really a good partnership relationship with quality tenants. We're talking about rents, right? And sometimes mechanical things fail in a home, and as a tenant, you want to make sure that your rent is always paid current. Because the moment you fall into default, even if there's, like, say, the air conditioner has gone out and the landlord isn't fixing it to the speed that you want it to be fixed, there's a methodology under state law that you should follow, but it's not withholding rents. Right? There's a process to it.
This is where I was going.
And so the advice is to be very cautious about how you go about doing that, because if you stop paying your rent, saying, well, landlord, I'm not going to pay you until you fix this problem, is not the solution. Because as soon as you stop paying that rent, then it opens the doors up that the landlord now has other tools, methodologies under state statute that they can move for eviction.
Well, the tenant now is in breach of the contract.
Yeah, the tenant is now in breach.
Once that tenant is in breach of the contract, the tenant's rights are off the table.
they become diminished, and so you want to protect that. And so it's really important to look at our next, it's not our next module we're going to do, but a future module that we have that goes through, well, what do I do if I have that repair? And there's very specific things in there, but the short answer is you have to give certain notice to your landlord, and then you can go have the repair done, show them the receipt, and pay the difference of the rent. And your full rent is paid because you have that receipt showing that you paid the rent via a vendor.
Yeah,
right? That's how it works.
There's a series, but the takeaway from us right now is always, always, always pay your rent.
Yep.
Don't withhold
guard
it.
yourself.
Don't
guard yourself
withhold it.
against. Yeah, guard yourself against giving more power to the landlord to cause you grief.
You want to be able to go to a judge, and say, I'm current on my rent. I've done everything I can. The landlord has not done what he has agreed to, or she, because they're the one that should know the rules. Great topic today. We're excited for the information that you have now with you, and keep going. Stay with it. Let us know if you have questions.